Hi, I'm Angela. This video is about what is betrayal here to teach us. So if you've experienced betrayal, you may know that it's extremely emotional, and recovery after betrayal is a very difficult path because you'll keep repeating feelings of not feeling safe, not being able to trust. And if it's not others that you don't trust, it's yourself. It can be your own intuition or your own instincts that you may also feel unable to trust. This video in particular is looking at betrayal in romantic relationships. However, a lot of what I'm sharing is also impacted greatly by childhood parenting relationships, so your mother and father or your caretakers, relationships with grandparents and close family members. Every adult relationship is a direct mirror or continuation of any stories and betrayals that you would have experienced in childhood. So if we're looking at what is betrayal here to teach us, we have to ask why. Why would we as humans incarnate to experience betrayal? It doesn't make sense. Emotionally, it's a situation of shock. For those of you who've experienced betrayal, I myself had a great example of it, not just once, but after a particular breakup, I locked myself in my apartment, not physically, but in a sense I never left the apartment for an entire week. And for 24 hours while I was sleeping or waking, if you could call it wake, because I felt almost out of my body, I had the same track of music on repeat. And I was processing for a week this sense of why did this happen? How could this happen to me? I don't believe this. It's not fair. It's not right. What we felt was so real. A lot of the feelings I had were just the same sense of being shot in my stomach. That sort of level of feeling is hard to make sense of. So when I come to relationships, what I was forced to understand is that relationships do not make sense. They're not something to solve by the mind. And of course, if you're recovering from betrayal, you can use the 5 stages of grief to assist you to accept it. However, I'm looking at what is the purpose of it in the first place, so we can begin to not be so overwhelmed by the emotions and lock yourself in the apartment just to even deal with the world or deal with the betrayal. So if we look at the soul, it's not so interesting as the emotions, but it's much, much, much more important. Why in this life did you choose to incarnate to experience betrayal? And if you've experienced more than once betrayal, it's a huge sign from your soul trying to get your attention. So the soul, when it goes into a life of betrayal or relationships, and in my experience I've seen some people have many relationships of betrayal in this period of time, this is to particularly wake you up to where you may have created a situation where you refuse to let go of some aspect of how either you feel about something or how you think, your judgment about something. And I usually mean a negative judgment, because a judgment that's more open would be saying, wow, isn't that interesting? What else could I do? But a judgment that is very strict about, this is how men should be. How could he do this to me? Women should be like that, shouldn't be like that. They should do what I want. That's a very heavy judgment. So often when we're looking at judgments about men and women, and you've felt betrayed and you've created that judgment, that's a huge keynote that your soul's trying to get you to let go of that old judgment that really isn't what your soul wants. But perhaps at the soul level, you came in being very wounded. That's not always the case. It can be just that you held on to a feeling or a thought that you refuse to let go of. And because of that, in another time, you may have hurt someone. And so often I work with clients, and if we get to the soul level, they'll refuse to even entertain the thought that they could have hurt someone. So I'm here to tell you that in my journey, that happened with me. And then when I just sat in the feeling, it wasn't so much of remembering what I did in another life, but the betrayal that I felt was very educational about how in this life I might be limiting people, judging others, and expecting others to somehow play up to my perfect universe that was going to meet my needs, rather than seeing how my expectations were forcing people to be something that they weren't meant to be. And if you don't believe in past lives, then think about it in that way. Think about how your judgments have meant that certain relationships were supposed to fit into a box that gave you what you needed, which could be a better self-esteem, a sense of being acknowledged and wanted, a sense of being equal, a sense of respect. And so if you have had those violated, that's because betrayal at some level is really getting you to connect to where your thoughts or feelings may not be able to give that respect and acknowledgement to others. And in that group of others is you. It's showing you where you haven't given yourself that acknowledgement, that self-esteem, that respect. Could be boundaries, and it can also be a sense of being able to be just who you are without having to be conditioned in any way. So betrayal is huge for those of you who are holding on to a sense of self that no longer works anymore. And yes, it's painful. However, if you want to explore it from a spiritual point of view, it's to move you out of concepts of who you think you are or who you think you should be and how others should be in your world, and move you to a place where you can actually be much more than you actually think you are.